We're here with the Sony A1 in Snowdonia in North Wales. The Sony A1 is a flagship in the Sony Alpha series. It's got a 50.1 megapixel sensor. That means that it can record a phenomenal 8K video, but it can also shoot stills up to 30 frames a second. That's without any blackout in the viewfinder as well, which is phenomenal for keeping track of your subject. There's also recently been a firmware update for this camera, so we're going to dig into what that offers. If you want to keep up to date with the latest tech and news from WEX, then remember to like this video and subscribe to our channel, and we're going to head over to Terry, who's going to take us through all of these features.
So we're at the Owl Sanctuary in Llandudno, and we're just working at the moment with some Indian eagle owls who are absolutely beautiful creatures. So we're inside the enclosure for their safety, enjoying them flying backwards and forwards. We're shooting with the A1 with the 300mm G Master. We're getting crisp, sharp, absolutely lightning fast autofocus acquisition and accuracy, and we've got some great shots so far. I'm using the bird eye subject recognition on the back of the camera, so the camera's going to use this database to make sure it gets good focus lock onto the bird once it recognises it. I'm using the sensitivity setting on the camera at level 4, so it's very responsive. It's going to track the bird very quickly, and I'm shooting at 30 frames per second, so I can go in and pick my absolute peak shot which you want to do. But one of the great benefits as well with shooting with the Sony Alpha 1 and all the Sony Alpha cameras is what you see is what you get environment from the EVF. So it's a game changer really. I can see the exposure value through the EVF, I can see the depth of field, I can see the colour temperature, I can actually see what the camera sees before I commit to take the shot. So once I take the image, I'm going to see it as it's coming through the electronic viewfinder, and it's going to be exactly what I get when I play back the image on file. I'm using the 300mm G Master lens on the A1 at the moment, and inside the enclosure what we're in, we've got about 70 foot, so the camera and the lens needs to get good, fast, accurate focus acquisition at a very early stage, because the bird will become really big in the viewfinder once it starts flying towards us. And the great news is that this camera and lens combination never ever lets me down. It gives me great results every single time. It locks on, it stays locked on, and it tracks the bird, and we get sharp images right the way through the flight. Well, that was incredible. At the Owl Sanctuary in Llandudno, we've just got up close and personal with some eagle owls, and it's just amazing. You know, a great thing about photography as well, you get to connect with nature and birds and everything. It's just a wonderful activity. Silent shutter, so important in this sort of environment, so we're not disturbing the birds. The camera is firing at 30 frames a second. It makes 120 calculations per second for autofocus and auto exposure, so that makes sure I get really great pictures every single time. 759 autofocus points on this camera, and they cover over 92% of the imaging centre. It's a really, really great camera to use for photographing wildlife, birds in flight, anything that moves quick. It's a fantastic camera to use. So the sensor in the Sony A1 is a 50 megapixel sensor. It's got 15 stops of dynamic range. But that means when we're shooting into a really bright backlit subject like this with the tree, the camera can capture all the details and make sure we've got them there on the file. The beauty of the 50 megapixel sensor, it's not just about how many megapixels there is, it's the quality of the image that the sensor captures. We're using the 16 to 35mm G Master lens Mark II, and that's going to give us absolutely pristine, beautifully sharp rendered images. I shoot sport photography also, and in that situation it allows me to crop right into the image and still retain beautiful detail, even on a 1:1 crop. At the moment I'm really loving the new Creators app, and in the latest firmware version for the Sony Alpha 1 we can now do a number of tasks with the Creators app. We can control the camera remotely, and we can import files as well. We can just see now the picture I've just taken is actually on the phone. So that means even if you're working professionally, if you're working in press, if you're working for a client who perhaps in somewhere else in the building or another location from where you're working, you can actually get the work to them in seconds for their approval. So I'm going to use this day to day in my events and sports work. The sooner I can get the images off the camera onto a picture desk editor or a client, the better. The world now we live in, it's all about social media and getting the images online as quick as possible. Oh, that's pretty cool, that, you know. That's really good, that. So another great feature in the Creators app is now that we have remote shooting. So we can control the camera from the smartphone. We can do that via Wi-Fi or via a USB cable. And we can connect to the camera and we can control the ISO, aperture, shutter speed and many other functions such as white balance. And it makes it really easy to control cameras, perhaps if they're in an awkward location or difficult to reach location.
Hi everybody, I've been behind the camera for this review, but I wanted to jump in front of it just to tell you a bit about the video capabilities of the A1. Most notably, it has that 8K video which we mentioned before, and that actually shoots up to 30p, so you can get your real-time playback in 8K. It's not even just 8K, which is obviously an insanely high resolution and allows a huge range of flexibility for cropping, but the 8K that the A1 delivers is actually oversampled from 8.6K. This is also true of the 4K that the camera shoots, because it's oversampled from 8.6K again, and that shoots up to 120p, so there's plenty of options in terms of slow motion 4K recording modes. You can film all of these modes in 10-bit 422 for that color grading flexibility, and along with that you can film in S-Cinetone, S-Log, all of your standard color profile looks that you get from Sony. So there's quite a lot of flexibility if you're somebody that wants to color grade your images quite intensely, or if you want a nice look straight out of the can. It doesn't matter whether you're somebody that likes to record video or photos with this camera, because you get up to 5.5 stops of image stabilization in the body. But some of you might have noticed that all of these features that I just mentioned were available upon release of the A1. So what's new with this firmware update? Well, actually quite a lot when it comes to video. For me, my favorite one is the fact that they've added focus breathing compensation, which quite a few of the Sony bodies that have come out since the A1 have. Now, I'll explain focus breathing quickly. It basically means that if you're filming a shot and you do a focus pull from the background or the foreground or vice versa, it will slightly change the field of view and it can be quite distracting. Now what they've done is the focus breathing compensation adds a slight crop to the image, which then means that they counteract that focus breathing going on, so the field of view remains the same throughout. And the last thing I want to tell you all about coming from this new firmware is UVC streaming and 4K up to 30p, which is really useful for any of you streamers out there.
So that wraps up our review. Terry, can you tell us some of the highlights from what you've shot?
You know, we've shot a lot of different things today. High-speed action, we've shot some landscapes. It's just a fantastic all-round camera. And some of the favourite features for me is the 50 megapixel sensor. That gives us, you know, tons and tons of detail in the file, allows us to crop in quite heavily if we need to and still retain a lot of quality in the image. The focusing ability of the camera, and with all the Sony kit, you know, that what you see is what you get environment with using the electronic viewfinder.
the fact that it's just such a professional all-rounder is why they've made this their flagship camera. I mean, Sony have a lot of cameras that have a lot of specialisms. You got high resolution, you got super low light sensitivity, but if you're working professionally, you need something that covers every eventuality. And I feel like, you know, shooting today, I could pick up the A1 confidently in any situation.
You're quite right what you say. For a working professional, perhaps who shoots, you know, multi-genres, multi-disciplines, sport, wedding, documentary, street, wildlife, the camera can literally do anything. You know, it's a very, very capable all-round camera.
One thing we've got to say is that it comes with a price tag. It's currently on the Works website 5879. That can be softened a bit by 0% finance that's available at the moment. And it also comes with a 5-year warranty. But that doesn't take away, you know, it is a pricey camera, so it's a considered purchase.
I'd agree, it is a considered purchase, but you do get an awful lot for your money as well. It's a flagship camera, 30 frames per second, silent shutter, extremely advanced autofocus system. You do get a lot for your money. And the thing with these cameras as well, they last a long time.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
The camera will serve you well for many, many years to come.
Yeah.
And when you think that the camera, it calculates auto exposure and also focus 120 times a second. So even if you are firing at 30 frames per second, you still get 4 calculations for each and every one of those frames.
Well, that wraps up our review. We've gone into loads of features of the camera. Hopefully we've demonstrated it really well to you, and let us know in the comments if it's something that you're looking to purchase in the future, if this is the camera for you, then and if you have any questions, let us know and we'll do our best to answer.